What's up friends, it's Megan here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about Descendathon. We are specifically talking about the prompts, recommendations for the prompts, and my TBR for this readathon. If you haven't watched my Descendathon announcement, I'll link it up above so you can find out all the rules, all the prompts, everything going on. But without further ado, let's jump into the recommendations. Okay, so I have 3 recommendations for each prompt. We'll start with the villains. For the villains, Mal is our first villain, and her prompt is to pick a book with a morally gray character or villain point of view. So I have 3 recommendations here. The first is Star Wars: The High Republic, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. This is part of the New Age High Republic arc for Star Wars, which is a prequel to pretty much everything about Star Wars we know so far. It is like the age of the High Republic, as it says, and this is really the first book you should probably read of the High Republic because it sets the tone and sets the stage for everything. In this book we are following the after effects of a spaceship pretty much just exploding or going into a crash, and the debris of everything and how it impacts the rest of the galaxy here. The Jedi are in on it, but more specifically we get the perspective of the villains in this, particularly in the second half of the book. So that was a really interesting thing because you are following specifically from the villain's perspective. So that is why this one is on the recommendations. Next is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This is literally called the villain's duology. First is Vicious and then there's Vengeful. If you've read Vicious, then I recommend Vengeful. But essentially we are following 2 characters in a dual timeline. The first is Victor and Eli when they are in college, and they are on a research project together to work through extraordinaries or people with special powers. And the second timeline is several years later when Victor has gotten out of jail, and it kind of goes through why Victor and Eli had a falling out. Extraordinaries, as I said, are people with special powers, but Victor and Eli specifically find out that they become extraordinary through a near-death experience, so they test this themselves and gain powers through that. So that was really cool, and it's really interesting to see how people's powers and how people's near-death experiences kind of create their powers, so on and so forth. Highly recommend. And the third recommendation for this prompt is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is an incredible trilogy. I love it so much. In this we are following a society with the renegades versus the anarchists. The renegades have claimed themselves to be the superheroes of this society, but in all reality everyone is pretty much morally gray in this world, and we are following Nova, who is an anarchist who pretty much sneaks her way into the renegades to learn some behind the scenes about them and attack them from the inside. It's just so good. So good. I can't express enough how much I love this series. Next is Carlos, or To Read a Book with Some Sort of Disability Representation. My first recommendation for this is literally any of the books in the Get a Life Chloe Brown trilogy. We have Get a Life Chloe Brown, Take a Hint Danny Brown, and Act Your Age Eve Brown. This is a phenomenal adult romance trilogy that uncovers the romances of the 3 Brown sisters, and in Get a Life Chloe Brown we specifically follow Chloe, who has kind of chronic illnesses, so that is why I recommend this series. Then my next recommendation is also a chronic illness representation, and that is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is perfect for spooky season if you're still in that mood, and it's a really great like commentary on grief and loss and when it's time to let go, that sort of thing. I really enjoyed reading this one. We are specifically following Rin, who is a grave digger, and it is her task to protect the village from bone houses, or essentially dead people who have re-risen and are, I don't even know. They're just coming back. We are also following Ellis, who is a map maker, and he was abandoned at a young age near this area, and he has tasked himself with plotting this area and like mapping it out, and together they go into the forest to map it out. Again, it's a really great commentary on the grief and loss. Next is the Tea Dragon Society, which is a little more of a representation that you will see in a physical format. And you can actually see it right on the cover here. One of our main characters is in a wheelchair. So this is really great for representation overall in sexuality, disabilities, dragons. We are following a young girl who has decided to become an apprenticed tea dragon caretaker, and essentially tea dragons are these little dragons that as you take care of them they grow tea leaves, and then the tea leaves allow you to drink and like look back on specific memories and good days and that sort of thing. It's just a really wholesome and adorable little graphic novel, and if you're looking for a short read, as I would hope you are in a readathon to power through the series, this is a great recommendation. Next is for Jay, which is to read a book with a heist or thief kind of plot. I took this prompt a little unconventionally, but I'm gonna roll with it anyway, so take this with a grain of salt. If you feel like these fit the recommendation, go for it. First we have Sorcery of Thorns. Elizabeth herself is not a thief, however a grimoire has been stolen and Elizabeth has been framed, so she has to team up with a sorcerer, which is the like natural enemy of the librarians, and go track down who stole the grimoire, get it back, that sort of thing. And that is why I chose this. This is a fantastic standalone, however be prepared to really want a sequel and not be satisfied because there is no sequel. It's a standalone. But I really love this book. Next is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. Again, a little unconventional, but in this we are following a girl who has tried to apply to colleges. However, the only scholarship she seems to be eligible for is tied to the prom queen crown. And this is a town in which the crown is kind of a legacy, and it's a very, very high society, I guess you could say. She goes to a private school, I believe, if I remember correctly. But her and another girl that are in the running fall in love. It's a beautiful sapphic romance that's also kind of enemies to lovers, not entirely, more so friends to lovers, I'd say, or adversaries. I don't know what the best word would be. They're not enemies, but they're running against each other, two lovers. Anyway, she is on the mission to steal the crown from the like typical popular girl. And finally is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller, one of my favorite books of 2021. Highly, highly, highly recommend this, or any Trisha Levenseller book, honestly. But this, we are following a girl who has to steal the prince's heart and make him fall in love and then kill him. So let me see if I can find, yeah. Alessandra is tired of being overlooked, but she has a plan to gain power. Sorry, not Prince, Shadow King. 1. Woo the Shadow King. 2. Marry him. 3. Kill him and take his kingdom for herself. What? Yes. Highly, highly. Oh my gosh. I love this book so much. Read it. This next one is always so hard because like covers are so subjective. So I tried to pick a couple different types of covers here. But essentially the prompt is Evie, a book that is not just a pretty cover. So this would be a book you find pretty, but also really are excited about and really find a lot of depth to, I guess. So the first one is Furyborn by Claire Legrand. In this, we are following a world in which there are two queens. There's the Blood Queen and the Sun Queen. The Blood Queen has the power to destroy the world, and the Sun Queen has the power to save it. And essentially, when the Blood Queen like rises, the angel gate falls and the angels can take back over. There's a lot going on in this, but the first book really deals with elemental magic and like competition slash trials, which are two of my absolute favorite tropes. So I was very excited to read this, and I can't wait to pick up Kingsbane. So yes. Next is a contemporary. It's called With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. In this we are following Imani, who is a senior in high school and wants to go to college for cooking and is a passion for cooking. However, she is a young mother. She has, I believe, a 2-year-old daughter, but because of having a daughter, she doesn't have as much money or drive to go to college. So it's just about her senior year, that sort of thing, and she is offered the opportunity to go on a trip and cultivate her like cooking skill, that sort of thing. There's enemies to lovers or begrudging allies to lovers, that sort of thing, and I just really enjoyed this as a contemporary. Next is A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. This is my final recommendation for the Evie prompt, and it follows two sisters who are basically set against one another and must fight for the crown, like fight to the death for the crown. This is essentially what I wanted Three Dark Crowns to be. It's a little darker than Three Dark Crowns, not as much like drama and romance outside of the competition. It's more focused on like obtaining the skills and learning the craft and that sort of thing. I felt there is a little bit of romance if I remember, but I enjoyed this one a lot more. So if you liked Three Dark Crowns but felt it could have been a teensy bit better, consider A River of Royal Blood. I still need to pick up the sequel though. Also, if you want to double up on prompts or do all 4 prompts in one book, I do have a few recommendations for you. First is probably quite obvious too, but it is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. It has a morally gray character point of view. It has disability rec because Kaz walks with a cane. It is not just a pretty cover, and it has a heist slash thief setting. The entire plot is a heist, so this is perfect for all 4 prompts. Same with The Gilded Wolves by Rishani Chokshi. These have a lot of similar elements, but this is still a fantastic book on its own. Don't let the like negative reviews about how it's like a knockoff of Six of Crows fool you. I think this is fantastic. It has a lot more of like historical elements and a lot more riddles, and the characters are completely different, and it has mental health representation, so I really enjoyed this one as well. Finally, you know I had to fit this in here somewhere. Crown of Feathers, I feel, fits all 4 prompts as well. There is disability representation, there is a villain perspective, morally gray, if you ask Callum. Obviously not just a pretty cover, and it has a heist setting in that a little bit unconventional, but Veronica has to like steal her spot in the Phoenix clan. Yay! Now on to the hero prompts. First we have Ben, which is to read a retelling. I think this is specifically like Beauty and the Beast, but I'm going to take it as any type of retelling, and I have a few recommendations here, of course. First is Legend Born by Tracy Dion. This is a Black Girl Magic King Arthur retelling, and honestly, if you need more than that, then I don't know what's wrong, because this was amazing. Please pick it up. Next we have Cinder, which is a sci-fi Cinderella retelling. It's part of the Lunar Chronicles. If you don't know, the Lunar Chronicles follows Cinder, which is a Cinderella retelling, Scarlet, which is a Red Riding Hood retelling, Cress, which is a Rapunzel retelling, and Winter, which is a Snow White retelling. So lots of opportunities for retellings here. Also, Marissa Meyer is just a fantastic retelling author. There's also Heartless, which is the Queen of Hearts origin story, and she also has Gild. It's either Gild or Gilded, which is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling coming out very soon. It might even be in time for this readathon, so maybe check one of those out. Final recommendation for the retelling prompt is House of Salt and Sorrows, which is a dark 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, in which we are following a main character who believes that her and her sisters are under a curse, and each sister keeps like dying off one by one. Kind of dark. Definitely a like unreliable narrator situation. Highly recommend. For Audrey, which is a pretty cover that you don't like, this is a little bit hard because I don't know what I don't like ahead of time. So I'm going to recommend some books that are pretty popular that others have really expressed liking that weren't necessarily my favorite, but they do have a beautiful cover, and they are, I didn't hate them. They were good books, but they weren't my favorites. So the first is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace, in which you are following a girl who has been tasked with being a soul magician, sorceress, witch person, and she reaps the souls of people, which satisfies this monster and keeps this monster at bay, but she messes up her orientation or coronation, and so now there's like no one to keep this monster at bay. Again, it wasn't my favorite, but this cover is gorgeous and I've heard a lot of people liked it. Next is A Curse So Dark and Lonely. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so it would fit this prompt and Beauty and the Beast, and it has really great disability representation. There is a music element to it in a way. Yeah. And finally is Carry On, which is, I believe, supposed to be like Harry Potter fan fiction, but it's by Rainbow Rowell, and it is the fan fiction from Fangirl, in which we are following Simon and Baz, and I believe Baz is a vampire, Simon's a wizard. There's a lot going on in this series. It's a fun fantasy YA series. A lot of people love it. There you go. Next prompt is for Jane, which is Underrated, and for this I have a couple recommendations. These are books that I don't really hear much about. First is Slay by Brittany Morris. This is one of my favorite contemporaries of all time at this point. In this we are following a black girl gamer who is a software developer slash designer of this online gaming portal that is specifically for black gamers, so you do have to be black to join this community. And behind the scenes there are like coins and that sort of thing, and a kid is murdered for his coins or profile or something of that nature, and this community is exposed to the world, and our main character is trying to decide if she should reveal herself as the creator of this world or if she should keep like to herself because it's under a lot of fire at the moment. And it was just fantastic. I really liked the element of like getting into the game and like learning how the game operates, but also the like more realistic hard-hitting side was fantastic as well. So yes. Next is another contemporary, Eliza and Her Monsters. This is what I wanted Fangirl to be and what I thought it was going to be. And this we are following Eliza, who is a creator of this fan fiction or comic, some sort of like web comic I believe, and she's like really popular online but very uncomfortable socially in person, and a new kid starts at her school and she is like kind of apprehensive about him, but she finds out that he is a huge fan of this webcomic world, and she starts to open up to him, and she reads his fan fiction, and they become friends, and then slowly they learn who the other person is on the forums, and it's just adorable. And finally is Crown of Coral and Pearl, in which we are following two twins, and in this society a girl is chosen based on her beauty to become the princess, the next princess, and the only way you can get off this like sea village is to become the princess. No one else is allowed to leave this sea village, and the romance in this is so good, and the like commentary on beauty is so good, and I just absolutely adored this. This is a sea-esque book done right. And the final prompt is for Doug, which is who I am representing. And for this, you were to read a book based on a musical or a book involving a musical element. So first, I have The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This is a Mozart Wolfgang retelling in which we are following Mozart's sister and her journey and discovering what it means to be a female and not have her art shown to the world because she's female. And she makes a wish to this, I don't know if he's like a fairy or goblin or some sort of magical creature, and it exposes her. However, Mozart suffers, and it's just this balance of like what's more important and that sort of thing. And it was a really good book. Next is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. The second book, When Night Breaks, actually just came out, so this is an excellent time to pick it up. But this is a Phantom of the Opera / Moulin Rouge kind of retelling, in which Kalia is a female magician, which is frowned upon. Females are not supposed to be magicians. So in like rebellion of this, she joins a competition to become the headlining act of the traveling circus. Throughout the competition, the other competitors and contestants just start like disappearing or being maimed or dying one by one, and it's a mystery with an unreliable narrator and romance and illusions, and it's just so much fun. Highly recommend. My final recommendation for music is Now That I've Found You by Christina Forrest. And in this, we are following a girl who is following in the footsteps of her grandma. Her grandma was like the golden girl of Hollywood, and she has almost blacklisted herself by accident. So she has been offered the opportunity to represent or present an award to her grandma for like lifetime achievement, but her grandma is very apprehensive about going back into this Hollywood life, and disappears right before the awards night. So our main character and this boy that happens to be a grocery errand boy for her grandma team up to find the grandma before the awards night, and this boy's in a band, which is why I said it had a music element. So there you go. Quickly on to what I'm going to be reading for this readathon. For Ben, or a retelling, I'm going to be reading In Deeper Waters. I obviously haven't read this, so I don't know for sure, but I've heard that this is a Little Mermaid retelling, so that's super exciting, and it's one of my most anticipated of the year. For underrated, I'm going to be reading the sequel to Crown of Coral and Pearl, which is Kingdom of Sea and Stone. Obviously, I don't know much about this, but it's following the events of Crown of Coral and Pearl. For Pretty Cover Don't Like, I'm going to be picking up The Heart Principle on audiobook. I've read The Kiss Quotient and the Bride Test. Kiss Quotient wasn't my favorite. Bride Test was a little bit better. Still not my favorite. I did on haul both of those, but I want to finish the series and finish it out, so I'm going to be picking up The Heart Principle just to see how I feel about it. So that is why this is on the list, but it's a pretty cover. For involved music, I'm going to be doing a reread of Where Dreams Descend in anticipation to read When Night Breaks. So very, very excited about that. And finally, I will be reading the group book Stay Gold. So these three plus Stay Gold and Heart Principle seems like an accomplishable TBR. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below what you're going to be reading for the readathon, what team you're on, all those sorts of things, and I'll check you in my next video. Bye everyone!